The US dollar, the greenback, the buck, the world's reserve currency, a symbol and a safe haven. This is a chart of the DXY, otherwise known as the Dollar Currency Index. It measures the value of the US dollar in relation to a bundle of the world's other fiat currencies. Notice the clear uptrend? While global markets as a whole have been in steep decline, the dollar is enjoying a massive bull run. Why is this? Despite geopolitical uncertainty and concerns about inflation, people and institutions all over the world see the United States as the safest place to park their money. In fact, this reality only reconfirms itself in trying macroeconomic times. Regardless of the chaos going on in the world, investors believe that the dollar will hold up and carry them through to a brighter financial future. But who controls the US dollar? That, of course, would be the Federal Reserve, a theoretically nonpartisan government organization responsible for monetary policy. The Fed has a so-called dual mandate to maximize employment and preserve price stability. In other words, make sure people have jobs and that the purchasing power of the dollar remains mostly consistent over time. It wields two main tools in order to fulfill this mission. The first, and until recently the only of these, is controlling interest rates. It does this by influencing what is known as the federal funds rate, and the details of what this means exactly are both incredibly technical and incredibly boring. The second, which emerged only recently after the 2008 financial crisis, consists of QE, quantitative easing, or money printing, and its opposite, QT, quantitative tightening. Put simply, this means buying or selling securities in order to inject or remove money from the economy. The Fed can choose to use these mechanisms however it likes. So long as the dollar remains the world reserve currency and investors choose to transact in dollars, then they also have to accept the Fed's decisions in regards to interest rates and alternative monetary policy. Say you don't like what the Fed is doing. For example, take the present day. The Fed has been aggressively raising interest rates in an attempt to slow down inflation, which is at multi-decade highs. This makes it more expensive to take out loans and encourages people to save rather than spend, which hopefully cools down rising prices. Some side consequences of this? For one, increasing interest rates on loans makes it way more expensive to buy a house, which slows down the real estate market. Two, equity valuations, so think the stock market, go down, since businesses have less access to cheap capital and therefore it becomes more expensive for them to operate. Also, there is a feedback loop of decreased demand throughout the economy, which can make a hit on earnings. Third, an add-on to point two, businesses which are strapped look to cut costs and do so by laying off workers, which leads to higher levels of unemployment and huge amounts of pain for individuals. Altogether, the Fed's choices, which we cannot really determine are right or wrong, except maybe in retrospect, have a huge impact on society and the broader world economy. And these decision makers, the Federal Reserve Chair and Fed committee members, are unelected bureaucrats. So, American citizens have very little control or accountability mechanisms on their actions. But if some other form of money supplanted the US dollar as the world's dominant currency, then that currency's monetary authority, or lack thereof, would dictate these sorts of things. Say you buy into this lofty idea. What's stopping you from making your own currency? At first glance, nothing. Most of the laws related to this are concerned with fraud and counterfeiting. So long as your form of money does not pretend to be the US dollar, you're in the clear. Or at least you should be. This is the story of how one man, a spiritual cannabis guru and anti-dollar activist from Hawaii, attempted to create his own currency rivaling the US dollar. And how the federal government fought to bring it down at all costs. Hawaii, 1974. The hippie counterculture movement of the 1960s is on the downswing. Only don't tell it to this free-spirited, off-the-grid commune of 20 or 30-somethings living on the Big Island. They have come here for a reason, to live a bit differently than how society expects them to. Without access to electricity or vehicles, they spend their days enjoying each other's company, and no doubt partaking in a number of mind-altering substances. Meanwhile, back in civilization, the US is experiencing one of the most extreme periods of heightened inflation in its history. Food, housing, and gas prices are rising, which has Americans from Honolulu to Hartford on edge. This period will later become famous for the aggressive rate-hiking regime of Fed Chair Paul Volcker, which precipitated several short recessions, but eventually brought inflation back under control. Despite their isolation from the outside world, they don't have TV or the internet after all, these hippies somehow know all about this macroeconomic phenomenon. They are sitting around their cooking fire discussing the issue passionately. It is at this moment that one man, a 30-year-old from Kansas City named Bernard von Nothaus, comes to an epiphany. The Federal Reserve, by wielding monetary policy to devalue the US currency, is committing a grave moral wrong. The value of money, he realizes, is intimately tied to social and political value. Continuing down this path will inevitably lead to the complete decay of American society. Something needs to be done. The young von Nothaus later outlines this philosophy in a short manifesto entitled To Know Value. Around the same time, he founds a company called the Royal Hawaiian Mint to produce collectible coins. Nixon took the US off the gold standard a few years prior, but von Nothaus believes that there is still a market for the precious metal. Its supply is fixed, and it has a long track record as a durable store of value. The Royal Hawaiian Mint begins creating coins, engraved with distinctive Hawaiian landmarks like volcanoes and famous areas of the archipelago's coastline. Though they appear like nothing more than collectibles, little does anyone know, the production of these coins is the start of something much, much bigger. Von Nothaus continues operating his Royal Hawaiian Mint venture for several decades. During this time, he also becomes a prominent advocate for the use of cannabis as part of spiritual practice. He also starts a family and has a few kids. He keeps this lifestyle up until the 1990s come around, and he once again feels the call to do more in order to fulfill the lofty economic ideology of his youth. Inspired by his reading about several private currencies that have popped up in recent years, he gets the idea to create his own. He packs up his life in Hawaii and hops on a plane to Evansville, Indiana, not exactly a tropical paradise. There, he teams up with a magazine publisher and starts advertising his invention, the Liberty Dollar. This new form of money looks a lot like the dollar we are all used to, only it functions quite a bit differently. Liberty dollars, unlike USD, are backed by physical assets, in this case precious metals, specifically silver and gold. 20 Liberty dollars are redeemable for a single ounce of silver. Liberty dollars, in this way, function as warehouse receipts, entitling the bearer to the corresponding physical asset should they choose to exchange. Von Nothaus and his business partners contract with a minting company in Idaho to produce the dollars, and also to custody the silver and gold reserves. In order to encourage adoption, merchants are offered discounts on orders for Liberty dollars. Eventually, the system shifts in favor of commissions, but the incentive remains the same: a financial reward in return for transacting in the new currency. Crucially, the Liberty Dollar fulfills the central tenet of von Nothaus's manifesto from decades earlier. It will not be inflationary, since it is backed by precious metals, the amount of which is theoretically fixed. Lest you should be fooled, though, the Liberty Dollar is equally a political statement. The umbrella organization von Nothaus founds to back it is named NORFED, an acronym standing for the National Organization for the Repeal of the Federal Reserve, a clear battle cry against the monetary establishment. Others evidently agree with the promise of such a campaign. By 2006, millions of Liberty dollars have entered circulation, and you can find them in cities across the country. As the Liberty dollar starts to gain in popularity, the federal government begins to catch on. While even at its height, the market capitalization of the Liberty dollar remains minuscule compared to established fiat currencies, it has grown enough to draw attention. The main reason for this, allegedly, has to do with the Liberty dollar's resemblance to the real dollar. To be sure, both have similar typeface and motifs. And the rectangular bills come in the same common denominations of $1, $5, $10, and $20. Liberty dollars are even emblazoned with the phrase, "Trust in God," a rephrased stand-in for the familiar "In God We Trust." You might mistake them for US dollars if you squint particularly hard. However, nowhere do Liberty dollars claim to be legal tender. And no counterfeiter worth his or her salt would attempt to pass them off as the genuine thing. That doesn't stop the US Mint in 2006 from sending von Nothaus and Norfed a letter suggesting that his production and dissemination of Liberty dollars is a federal crime, on the basis that they are being used to deceive people into believing they are genuine US dollars. Von Nothaus, seeing this as a ridiculous claim, ignores the letter. In response, the Mint, later in 2006, issues a press release stating that Justice Department prosecutors agree with their assertion that the profusion of Liberty dollars is a federal crime. Norfed responds publicly by saying, "The Liberty dollar never has claimed to be, does not claim to be, is not, and does not purport to be legal tender." To its creators, the Liberty dollar is merely a medallion that can be used for barter. In 2007, von Nothaus files a lawsuit in District Court of the Southern District of Indiana, seeking an injunction against the US Mint's claim that the Liberty dollar is illegal. Before this legal battle can go anywhere, the FBI and US Secret Service conduct a raid on Norfed's Evansville offices, seizing all sorts of physical assets, including gold and silver, as well as digital and physical records. They also freeze the organization's bank accounts, making it all but impossible to continue operations. Von Nothaus and his business partners are incredulous, as they strongly believe that the Liberty dollars are legal and they have done nothing wrong. An indictment soon follows in 2009, accusing von Nothaus of a number of fraud and counterfeiting charges. Specifically, the government focuses on a part of Title 18 in the US Code, Section 486, which states, "Whoever, except as authorized by law, makes or utters or passes or attempts to utter or pass any coins of gold or silver or other metal or alloys of metals intended for use as current money, whether in the resemblance of coins of the United States or of foreign countries, or of original design, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years, or both." Despite a not guilty plea and an impassioned legal defense, the force of the entire federal government, as well as perhaps even the monetary status quo itself, is against von Nothaus. He is summarily found guilty on multiple counts in 2011 after rather expedited deliberations, and faces 15 years in prison as well as a large fine. Additionally, $7 million of gold and silver are taken from his possession. The most telling sign of the government's attitude can be found in the violent language with which it characterizes the Liberty dollar venture. U.S. Attorney Ann M. Tompkins describes the alternative dollars as a unique form of domestic terrorism, which, although they do not involve violence, are every bit as insidious and represent a clear and present danger to the economic stability of this country. Clearly, the stakes here rise far above some run-of-the-mill financial crime. Rather, from the government's perspective, they mark a threat to the stability of the United States itself. This is what happens when you come after Daddy Dollar. It seems rather perfect timing in the wake of the financial crisis, as von Nauthaus's court case winds through the legal system, that another alternative currency is born. Yes, I'm talking about Bitcoin. Launched in 2009, the digital currency takes a remarkably novel approach compared to the Liberty Dollar, as well as any other currency that has existed thus far, for that matter. Nonetheless, many of the philosophical tenets of the Liberty Dollar are also embedded in Bitcoin. It is impossible to know whether Satoshi Nakamoto, the cryptocurrency's mysterious and potentially fictitious creator, drew inspiration from the Liberty Dollar. Even if he did not, the similarities appear significant. Both, of course, offer an alternative to the US dollar and other fiat currencies. More notably, their monetary dynamics are both almost the opposite of the inflationary dollar. Bitcoin has an algorithmically dictated maximum supply of 21 million. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And there is no central organization like the Federal Reserve that can devalue Bitcoin by printing more of it. More interesting, maybe, is the central difference between the two forms of money. Bitcoin is not one guy in an office in Indiana, nor is it some stockpile of gold and silver sitting in an Idaho warehouse. Due to its decentralized nature, its ledger existing on countless computers across the world, bringing it under control poses a likely insurmountable hurdle, even for a force as powerful as the US government. But will that stop it from trying? Time will tell, of course. Regardless of the outcome, it will be interesting to see how the federal government attempts to regulate or rein in Bitcoin and other cryptos, especially if they eventually come to compete more earnestly with the US dollar. At least when it comes to the importance of maintaining dollar dominance and the US government's attitude toward doing so, the Liberty Dollar may serve as an illustrative prelude.